We're live, everybody. What's up, everybody?
We finally made it. First off, we thanks for coming back, joining us. We're a little bit late, but it's for a great reason. As you can see, we have Councilwoman Yolanda Avila with us, and we're going to discuss the our race, or her race in the 4th district, and we got some questions for her and things like that. So yeah,
really hard-hitting questions.
Hard-hitting.
But she was the first one to agree to come on, really quickly. So we're happy that she's here.
Very happy.
But we are going to blame her for getting started late. It's not our fault.
No. Yes,
no, it's fine.
It's true, audience.
Thank you so much.
Late,
the truth is, we sent one email. We sent it late, and you replied, and you said, yes, I want to come. So we really thank you so much, and really are appreciative of you taking your time out this morning to come talk to us. So thank you so much. So yeah, John, you want to?
Well, so.
Let's turn that off. Turned on.
The first question I want to ask is the most hard-hitting question I think of all, because I hear your name pronounced different ways. How would you want us to pronounce your last name?
Okay, so first of all, I want to say thank you, Sean and John,
yes, ma'am,
for having me on here. I really appreciate it. I think we need as many platforms as possible to get, the word out on what's going on in the city, right?
Yeah,
and
right.
where we have a voice and to make things happen.
Yes, ma'am.
So to answer that, Puma is delighted to be here. As you can see, he's just hanging out, going to bed.
Puma's in the building. Everybody knows Puma.
So if you look at that, so if you would do AHH, write it right, and it'd be and then the letter V, and then La. So Avila. Avila.
Okay.
Avila.
Okay. Yeah, because people butcher your name all the time.
Oh my God, yes.
God. And I've said this a few times too, that what I really hate is that when you're on city council, and I know that you've seen this happen too. They talk to the men, and it's Mr. Geisinger, or Council such and such, and Mr. Pico, and Mr. such and Yolanda. And I'm like, you son of a, anyway, it really upsets me. So say her name right and say her title the right way.
I understand though, people mispronounce my last name all the time. So
I
wanted to respect that,
Indeed. So why are you running? What made you run again this next election coming up?
I have things to finish up
and
other things to start.
Yeah.
But initially when I ran when I grew up here, right? Since 1958. Daddy was stationed at Fort Carson, and Mom saw the city and said, "Oh my God, I want to make this home."
Yeah.
And so we made this home, and Mom always got involved in cultural arts. So she was a dance director for La Fiesta Bonita.
Oh, okay.
And that was a fiesta, can you believe it, in the late 50s and 60s and 70s, 3-day festival where we brought mariachi from Mexico, we all danced. Really, we had culture. And so, but my mom would seek out what's going on in the community, and we would, go to different events. So I grew up in that. So when I was 12 years old, actually I was 13, there was a city council race. It was Lou Cortez. He's Latino, right? I'm like, okay. So all the Latinos get together. We meet at the Pack House, and they don't have it anymore at Colorado College.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And where I met him.
Oh, okay.
I was 13, he was 15, and we were canvassing for city council. Did I know at that time that I would end up being on city council? I was just a canvasser, going to support, Lou Cortez, and ultimately he didn't win, but he ended up being appointed several years later.
Oh, okay.
So, he got in that way. So I grew up in the city. It was really clean when I was growing up. When I was I just lived down the street, right?
Right.
Just south of Kmart with K-Land.
Yeah.
And so, or I should say not south, it's east.
Oh, okay.
East. And it was a dirt road, like Shelton and Pikes Peak, and that was all dirt road, and it was growing, and it was new, and it was exciting. However, fast forward, graduated from Colorado College, couldn't find a job. We were in a recession. I moved to California, where every job I apply for, I'm offered. So I held out for the job of my dreams, and that was a criminal defense investigator. which I did for 21 years. And we, as the public defender's office, what we represent the indigent, right? Yeah. And I saw there clearly what were happening to people of color. Yeah. The disproportionate people that would end up going to jail. I had an attorney come to me and said, I'm going to win this case. It's exactly like the last case I had, but I'm going to win this case. I said, why are you going to win? He said, because my client's white. Mm-hmm. And that was the reality. Yeah. So it was always fighting, fighting and working for the cause of, people that couldn't pay for a lawyer. But we were, public defender gets a bad rap, but man, I worked with some incredible attorneys, incredible investigators, and we did some good jobs. So anyway, during that time, I start to lose my vision. And I'm trying to figure out how to maneuver life and whether I'm going to be able to do my job. I actually hid it. I was ashamed of being blind, if you can believe that, because I was afraid of being treated less than. Right. And so I would hide it. But I was busted out. Yeah. And, can't hide being blind and running into walls that long, tripping over benches. Yeah. So I made the transition. So I stopped driving in 2000 and started to use the bus. Mm-hmm. And so the transition was much easier, right? Because the buses there in California were every 10, 15 minutes. Right.
Imagine that.
A stop. A stop every few blocks, right? The sidewalks were walkable. Mm. And the ramps, and they had those for crossing the street, the little buttons and a little tweet saying it's safe for you to walk across. Yeah. And so it was easier to deal, I'm going to admit, I did have 2 years of being in a fog, right. Being depressed, man, what am I going to do? Oh, yeah, I bet. So I was totally in this fog, but the transportation worked. So I learned, right, my blindness and all that. I learned my blind skills, the computer, how to maneuver with a cane. Ultimately, I got a dog, but just how to maneuver that world. I got those skills. And so what I learned was that I was so much more than my 5 senses, right? The depth and breadth of who we are is huge. Right. And so it's working with that. So my mom's going to turn 90. I'm ready to retire. I've been there 21 years. And I had bought a house in 2005 to be near my mom. And I bought that house thinking I can just walk to mom's house anytime. And I rented that out when I was here. But so I was going to come back. Mom was going to turn 90. So I come back, and a third of the city lights are out. Oh, and okay. There's transit only running Monday through Friday, done at 5:30. Right. And I'm like, what happened to my city? Yeah. Moreover, what happened to my district? And because if there was a sidewalk, it was all dilapidated or deteriorating. Right. And so I was like, oh no. And so I couldn't get the bus on the weekends, to go grocery shopping, to do anything. And if most people with disabilities, we don't want to be a burden. We want to contribute. We want to do everything that we can and more, because, look at me, but there's a lot of people with disabilities have so much to contribute, right? Yeah. Have so much to give. So I was like, no, this is messed up. Right. Yeah. So I go to city council meetings, and I go to Pikes Peak Rural Transit Authority meetings, because they were supposed to there was a 1 cent tax so that we could have this transportation. But the city decided not to fund that, even though they were getting the tax money for it. Oh, wow. $500,000. Imagine that. Yes. So I was like, hey, you guys, so I went to PPRTA because they were the holders of the funds. I was like, it's time to do what's right. The voters voted for this. And so I just joined organizations, Organizing for Transit, Coalition, and yes, it had to do with my disability. It's what affected me, right. Mm-hmm. But it affected our district. You know that our district in Southeast relies more on public transportation than the whole rest of the city. Right. Yeah. And we need it to get this. So initially, to answer your question in a really long way. No, I appreciate it. Thank you. Is that I saw this need, and it took 3 years. It took 3 years because I returned in 2011, almost 2012, that I worked on this, and in those 3 years we got nighttime and 7 days a week.
Oh, great.
So seeing that, I thought, okay, if I could do that on a grassroots level, everything I've done is grassroots, I can probably do a lot more being on city council. So that is why I ran initially.
Right. So you really come out of that just like, I want these specific
change.
change. As an
You're
advocate,
going
you're
to
coming
change
in.
it.
Yeah.
That's really dope.
You're not just a retired Air Force officer that wants to have some power.
Right.
I'm not saying that's what other people on city council are, but I'm just saying that's not where you came from.
I hear you.
Yeah.
No, but what's really sad is that I wouldn't be able to do this job. Like, I've never been on disability. I think people think that I've been on. I did retire. I have a pension from the Orange County Public Defender's Office. So I have a pension which allows me to do that.
Right.
And that's a tragedy because we have young people that they cannot live on $6,250 a year.
Yeah.
They just can't do it. But we need that voice. We need that voice of that young dad or young mom that knows what's going on with the kids and the cities and the roads. So why am I running this time? I mean, it's to continue the transit. I mean, we just got like more frequency of 15 minutes. Even all the business people from the nation say, God, you guys need a bus from the airport to downtown.
It's crazy that there isn't one.
We're like the second largest city in the state. We're Olympic City, USA, and we don't have a bus from the airport.
Right.
I was just telling Sean about the time I had to hitchchike from the airport because I
Right?
landed and I was like, oh, I don't have any money and I don't have my car, so I just had to hitchhike
And then
home
we
one
laughed
time.
about it.
And you're here to tell the story?
Yeah, and I've had to walk from the airport myself. I've known a couple of people probably had to walk from the airport before. Just like, yeah, wait a minute, there's no bus.
Yeah.
So, we appreciate it, and we knew, obviously because we were kind of plugged in, but I didn't realize all of the things that you that got you to that point,
Right.
and we talk about the arrival of somebody, right? So, people will see you at the city council and think, oh, you just decided you want to run for city council, and didn't realize there was a whole long trip that you made to get there, and that you actually made that trip on purpose. You know what I mean? So, we appreciate it and thank you. And I'm sure that there's a lot of people that benefited from the work that you did that is like, praising your name. And I'm sure, and I agree with them. I thank you for everything that you've done so far. And so going on, so what's next? Was that your biggest accomplishment?
The transit. Oh no, there's a lot because
what was
I
it?
say
What do you
that
think that was?
that was one of them.
Yeah.
But the 2A program, which was to the city, for our roads and construction.
Right.
Well, I wasn't thinking they were happening here in the Southeast. And even though we were paying the taxes, and so I was like, I want to get my fair share.
Right.
So the first, when I first elected to city council in 2017, the mayor calls and his communication saying, we're going to do our first paving for this season in Southeast. And I'm like, you want to be there for the groundbreaking? I was like, oh yeah. And so they showed, it's like, yes, we're going to invest in redoing the roads in Southeast. And so that's really been big. But I'm going to say that I feel like some of Gandhi says the worst violence is poverty.
Right.
And so in poverty, we've had so many barriers in terms of transportation, not being able to, get to jobs and to grocery stores. Poverty in terms of not having retail space and economic development here, not investing in our community.
Yeah.
Poverty in terms of taking these services. So when I first came on, it had just happened like 4 or 5 years prior. So the county, I'm really wanting people to hold the county and county commissioners
That's a good point.
responsible because they got a good deal, they said.
Yeah.
So we live in Southeast. We live here, and that's the city, right? And they moved the service center, and we had DHS, and we had Social Security. We had all this stuff like right here in our backyard. Granted, it wasn't a one-stop center, and we had the workforce there downtown, but it was easy to get to downtown, right?
Yeah.
So they put it way in northwest of town. What happened? Our unemployment rate was 8.5 at our heyday, like when we started to do better, and the rest of the city was 3.5. At one point before COVID, we were at 2.5. So I was beating the drum, and they were saying, well, transit, we'll try to get transit once an hour. It takes you 2 hours to get there, and 2 hours back. And so again, they put a barrier and an obstacle for jobs, for services, again. So I have been beating that drum. They're like, that needs to be closer, and working for a satellite service. For 2 years, I worked to get DHS, a satellite service for DHS to be here. And that's not my job. I don't work for the county, but my community needs it, right? So I put in 60 hours a week, so the 40 hours I'm doing all my city utilities, boards, but the extra 20 is like to zero in on what my community needs here in Southeast. So I worked with Peak Vista. So for the first time ever in 80916, we got a medical clinic with doctors, with nurses, with behavioral health, with dental, with vision. First time ever. 8096 never had a clinic. 80916. And then I worked with Peak Vista, and I was told that, hey, Yolanda, they're meeting here at Sand Creek Library for DHS services. It's like once a week. I'm like, what? I didn't know what was going on. So I got the department head, Julie Crow, Pam McManus from Pikes Peak Vista, and I brought them all together. County commissioner wasn't involved in that, none of them. And I said, we got to do something. Can DHS have an office or two at Peak Vista there on Jetwing? And it took a year and a half, but they invited me to the ribbon cutting. We got it.
Nice.
So now our constituents, our residents, do not have to hop the bus and go all the way over there. It's right there in their backyard, and there's transit there.
Oh, nice.
So it's been a lot of different things, but one of my things is, and again, it's poverty. We've got to have stimulation for people, a place to go. So we've never ever had an urban renewal authority project. And what it is, it's like $15 million that in tax incentives and to start these economic projects. So never. I mean, we're overlooked. Air Force Academy Visitor Center. They got it like that.
Downtown.
And it's considered blight.
No.
And, blight.
Don't get me started on that.
Yeah, so it's blighted, right? Yeah, we need to have it here. But I saw how the investor, the developer, man, they just had their ducks in a row. They lined it up. They had these beautiful, great presentations. And you're like, whoa. And all I could think about when I'm there, I was like, why can't this happen in Southeast? Why isn't there a commitment to investment? Why is this not happening? And they're like, oh, Yolanda, people just don't want to invest there. Well, now they are. The city has gone committed to it for the Mission Trace Center. And that, it's retail space, it's services, it's a hub. I mean, everybody's been crying out for a hub, like a really big gathering space so we can gather. It's affordable housing, universal, and I'm going to talk about universal. It's universal housing is that so the doorways can fit wheelchairs. It's completely accessible to, blind people, people in wheelchairs, and so it's going to be state-of-the-art universal. There's going to be a walkway to connect to the trails around the Mission Trace Shopping Center. There's going to be a bus stop, and bridges so they can cross the Hancock Bridge.
That
Yeah,
was my next
yeah,
question.
yeah,
Can we get a bridge? Yeah.
Yes.
Because the roads in Colorado Springs are crazy. It's just like
they
huge
need a
roads
bridge
that are
right
like you don't want to walk around.
Right?
Yeah.
So this is one of the projects we're looking at, and it's Toby Gannett, and he's the investor that's like, now people are really paying attention. I've had people tell me I never even thought or knew about Southeast until 2 years ago.
Right.
And they can feel the energy now.
Yeah.
But is there a lot to work on? Yeah. So you guys have questions?
No.
Well, yeah. Our
You
next
kinda-
question
you
was
were
like,
kinda
what's your big thing coming up?
Yeah,
Like,
it
what do you
seems
want to
like-
accomplish if you get reelected
I
for the
want
next 4
those
years?
2 urban renewal projects, and we're going to have them.
Yeah.
We have another housing project there on Academy in Verde.
All right.
And Verde is green, by the way. And that's going to be set up in a way to get the community to interact. You know, they're going to have like a library services there and a community center.
Oh, okay.
And they're going to have a way for places for the kids and for it to be more interactive. And as I talk to developers that coming in, they're looking more at the character of the community, not to like just plop in, you know, these housing projects, but to really think about what the community wants. I'm going to toot my horn. I mean, I had a lot to do with Panorama Park, a 13-acre park that they're going to have a mosaic that's going up tiles around where the restrooms are and stuff to reflect the community and how we look like, you know, all the diversity in this community.
Yeah.
And so I've been on that with parks since the get-go because I was so upset. I'm going to use nice language.
No, sorry, you can cuss on just
I was so upset that I have for Deerfield Hills. I mean, I've had so many fights on council. I mean, that Deerfield Hills had been asking for security cameras. $30,000. They already had everything set up. All they needed was cameras because there was a lot of vandalism and stuff going on.
Yeah.
This is when I first got elected in 2017. Well, Venezia Park up northeast gets vandalized. And how much was it? We say, we had an emergency meeting where we didn't have to have 2 votes on it, just 1 vote on it, a resolution. And we gave them something like $850,000 like that. And
that's always the case.
Right, yeah.
It's pattern.
And that's when I was harping on the parks. I said, we don't have trees, we don't have bathrooms, you know, we don't have anything. And I mean, we have very little, and they keep saying Prospect Lake. I go, well, that's not really all the way in Southeast. Yes, some, you know, John Adams neighborhood, we get to enjoy that.
Yeah.
I grew up going there, actually, and I took my kids there.
It's not our space, though. It's the
It's
city
like a community
space.
park. It's like a city park. Yeah,
exactly.
yeah.
We get ran out of there.
Yep, right?
Yeah.
And so, no, I was like, so this is a neighborhood park. It's 13 acres. It's going to have all the amenities that Venezia has with the spray parks, but it's going to have our feel in it. And so I've been working with that every step of the way because I was like, oh, no. So, you know, sometimes I think that I have actually been told on the dais, we are tired about hearing about Southeast.
And does anybody say that about any other part of town?
A couple of years ago. That was a couple of years ago. I go, well, we're tired of living it.
Yeah.
So, you know, we need investment. And so every time they're going to do something, they let me know, Yolanda, we're going to do this. I was like, okay, cool. What else can we get? And so,
got a lot of catching up to do.
We have. I mean, we're so behind. And so when you ask, why am I running? I didn't know it. I didn't know it. I mean, had I not gone blind, I would be in California probably because I had the means to fly here all the time. I used to fly 3 times a year, but with my mom getting older, I probably would have come like 6 times a year. And my ambition was to be the chief investigator in Orange County. I've always been pretty ambitious.
Yeah.
When I came here, I thought, well, I read 5 books a week. I read 5 books a week until I got on council. And
now you get to read reports.
yeah, 1,000 pages of documents. But I still read, even on council. It's just during this COVID and campaign cycle that I'm just down to 1 book a month, which I'm really sad about. But I love to read, and I did yoga, and so I just thought I was just going to hang out with my mom, which I did, and I was just hanging out, but then going to places, and then I realized it was like, it's way bigger than me. It's not about me at all. It isn't. It's about a community that's been left behind, and if you don't keep on them, they will leave us behind.
Right.
Yeah.
And I really feel that this is my calling. I didn't know it. And then, but when I think about having canvassed at 13 for a city council member, that this is my calling. And that's why it's a lot of work, but it doesn't feel like work.
Right.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel like work at all. It just feels like, and I'll tell you, I've left puddles of tears on my desk in my office. And
Good going, Sean.
Oh gosh.
and then I've had some wins, and it's like, oh, yes, and just enough to keep going. So I know we'll probably get to the police thing, and so I think we'll need to.
Yeah.
And so, but yeah, I just feel it. I mean, I had kids. I was married here. I had kids here. Southborough. We lived in Southborough, Eastborough, Pikes Peak Park. You know, grew up here in Park Hill, and so until I left, this was it. But I lived in the West Side, and just south downtown by Lowell and what used to be South Junior.
Yeah.
We lived on Weber, and I lived on.
Oh, okay.
And my parents had a house on the West Side, and we went to France. So another thing about me is like I've lived in 3 countries. I spoke 3 languages by the time I was 7.
Nice.
And that because we lived in France. But guess what? I don't remember French. Like, je m'appelle Yolanda. Parlez-vous français?
I mean,
But I still got my Spanish down.
yeah.
Right.
And but yeah, it's important to me, and it's not about me. I mean, because I'm doing okay, right? I probably have the most modest income on council, but I feel really blessed, and I own my own home, and my mother recently passed away. The reason I came, and I say she did a bait and switch, because she brought me here. Now, like
she's on my.
she was, she was always
to be home. Huh? She needed you to be here.
Yeah.
She was always involved, though. She was always involved. I was always involved since I was 5 years old.
Oh, okay.
So always involved in politics, but I didn't think I was gonna run.
Right. That's crazy, man.
Yeah.
I honestly sitting here, I'm like, gosh, man, I feel so bad for being so mean. Because in all honesty, when you're saying your story, I'm like, yo, I was doing the same thing, kind of, like things that were affecting me and that I felt that I knew needed to change. Like, we kind of stepped up and were like, hey guys, there's something that needs to happen here, and yeah, so I can relate to it, and so what also it speaks to is just you're all the way down for the Southside. Like, I don't know how else to put it. Like, you're really down for this because there's really no reason for you to had I don't know, paid any attention to what was going on, because you obviously had things that you were really real things that you were focused on and trying to get done, and you gave us that attention that we were looking for. And again, I guess we can kind of talk about, I don't know.
Let's actually, I mean, this is a great transition into talking about the police, I think.
Yeah.
Because I know that during, after Devon Bailey was murdered, that became like a big issue. And we went to city council meetings and we're pushing an oversight committee and things like this. And I remember one of the meetings we went to, I think it was a budget meeting, and we make fun of Jill Gabler all the time.
Yeah.
She was like, trying to get money for trees, and you had brought up like this oversight thing. So really, I guess I just want to talk about that, like your experiences on council and with other council members and with the mayor around these issues of police violence. not only in Southeast, I mean, it's a problem in the entire city, but
Yeah.
it's really concentrated here in the Southeast. Like, what has been your experience with that? Because I know it seemed like, a lot of the, David Geislinger likes to, like, he talks, and then.
Price process.
Yeah. But when it comes down to it, it always seems like he, like, doesn't, like, it's the vote that counts,
The vote,
right?
Yeah.
Do
they
that.
Well, he
believe
was a
us?
prosecutor. How many brown and black people did he put behind jail?
Yeah.
So he has to seem like he's equitable and he did the right process and the right thing. But he didn't look to what's really happening. I mean, we represent Irvine. In Irvine, there were black university students. But I remember this one guy, he was taken in to jail because he was on a bike and the cops assumed he had stolen the bike.
Right.
So it was like, riding a bike while black.
Yeah.
And I have been in that work, but I was on the defense side and I could never ever be on the prosecutorial side, because this is what I feel is that when people say law and order, it's law and order for the white privileged class or for the dominant class. And because the laws were made that way for property owners and they were made for that way. And so when the DAs would, it was easy wins for them. And because everything was on their side. So when I see, and I don't want to disrespect the mayor or any of my fellow council members, but they have an experience of being prosecutors. And they don't have an experience of being, a person of color. I mean, in areas like in Irvine too, Asians, like Vietnamese, they're really persecuted too. And so it's like anybody that's a different color or just has a different feel, we just are tough on them. But I'm going to go back to the very beginning for when the Devon Bailey shooting happened. I remember hearing about it, and Jody Allen, she told me she was going down there, and I was like, God, I would have wanted to go, just, to go, but I didn't. And I'm going to be honest, I was just like, I didn't know where to go. I was like stunned, and I knew where my heart was this, but I'm thinking I'm going to try to be diplomatic and see if I can just work this. So I feel that I should have been there. So I feel like I should have been there, just present. But I'll tell you, there's not buses that go there.
Yeah.
No buses that go there, and I don't have. At that time, I didn't feel I had someone to call and say, "Hey, take me there." And so that always is an issue. I don't know if I would have been able to drive if I had just been like, "Okay, I'm there." Okay, so the fast forward to where the unrest and people are like, we've got to do something. Rightly so, right? Because it was, it was a really bad incident. And it had been, I had heard about Josh Feehill being shot so many times.
Right.
And his family was so concerned because of his mental health condition. And so we were going to have the council meeting. So I'm going to tell you, we had the council meeting with the mayor. And they tell Richard Scorman, and this is a lunch meeting, so I'm not giving anything up. Press could be there, but they weren't showing up by that time. And they said, Richard, we only want 3 people to be able to talk. And Richard's like listening to everybody. And I said, oh no.
Oh, this was before that September meeting?
This is before that meeting, and that's before the altercation with you. And so I was like, oh no, this is the people's house. And a lot of people that are coming to speak have never been here before. And they have that right to speak. So anybody that wants to speak, anybody will be speaking. I mean, I'm not the president, I'm not the mayor, but that's what I said. I said, every person will speak. I go, we have people come to us and complain every 2 weeks, the same 4 or 5 people that come and tell us how horrible, lousy we are. And they get to speak all the time. And they they probably all together have spoken like 8 hours, if
Right.
you know, in the whole
Mm-hmm.
few years. And so I was like, no, they're gonna talk. And when I would say something, they would like, you know, and it was just me.
Right.
Yeah.
It was just me. And here I was like, I'm the brown blind chick, right?
Yeah.
But and I would get this like, and Richard goes, okay, so well everybody will get to speak, and so behind the scenes, I was already had a lot of tension with my fellow council members.
Yeah.
They couldn't believe it. But see, with the police, I think if we had the appropriate policies and the trainings and the community stuff, and that's what I was that's where I was like being diplomatic, saying the police, you know, it's not them so much, it's just, I didn't say that, the culture, but it's the training, it's the practices, and if they had the right thing, we'd have a better police force.
Yeah.
But I was more upset. I was more like, who's Rachel Stovall? She hasn't been there, right?
Yeah.
She didn't come to John Adams. She didn't do any of that stuff. She goes, the Gazette was there. I was like, yeah, but you weren't.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I think when you saw
the difference was that she knew who to call to come there. She had to get walked down there. So you know, anyway.
I mean, Rachel Stovall's my old boss actually when I was a community organizer in Southeast.
Oh yeah.
That's how I know her. Way back in 2004,
what was that
2005.
organization?
Acorn. Yeah.
Acorn, yeah. Yeah.
So when I was calling her out about what she was posting on Facebook about me, and then you came to her defense, I was like, but I have to tell you, I got it. I did get it. Have you ever read Ta-Nehisi Coates?
I keep meaning to.
Oh,
No.
you guys have got to read
Yeah.
him because I had read several of his nonfiction books, and he went to, is it Howard University, the Black University,
Right,
and he talks about going to the Mecca, and he really articulates and so beautifully about the experience, and the experience of Black men, and in that process he mostly talks about men, but he elevates women too, the Black woman, and his writing. So I was thinking of, because I do read a lot, I was thinking all of what I was reading, so I wasn't mad at you.
Mm-hmm.
I got it. I got it. And what I thought is like, you didn't get me, right? That you didn't really know me.
Yeah.
And so I was like, but I got it. And then part of it put me over, and I was like, I'm not, I get it. He's had an experience that's been brutal. And every time there's a shooting or killing or, we get re-traumatized, and I'm thinking he gets re-traumatized. I think there was a Facebook thing about, you know, how many of you had a gun pointed to your head.
Oh yeah.
Well, I have
right,
4
right.
brothers, and 3 of them did.
Right.
You know, and they're darker than I am, and it's like shades of dark, brown or black, and so,
Yeah.
I remember the cops, at our door, and my mom crying, and just all this, drama. So I grew up in a brown household, right?
Yeah.
And so, but I did get it. I mean, I totally, but I just recently read, not too, it's been about 6 months, by Ta-Nehisi Coates. He did a fiction, and you guys all have to read it, and that's
Okay.
why I'm saying it. It's called The Water Dancer.
Okay.
And after I read that, I was like, I was already getting you, but after I read that, I was like, I totally get Sean. I just like any feelings, because really when you have feelings of anger and you're holding all that, you can't get anywhere, right?
Right.
And it just like, I had, everything had left me, and I was like, had this feeling of understanding, and even though I'm not Black and I'm not a man, and I just think that every experience just carries its own, different weights, and so, but even power though, and greatness. And so after I read that, I was like, I totally get him. But I was like, so this is a great, I mean, I'm being really personal with you, but with the whole public here.
Right, yeah.
And so, that's why I think our people really got to get educated and read as much as possible of what's going on. And, when we get, so back to the city thing,
Yeah.
I saw that I was getting it from all ends.
Right.
And I was like, this isn't working, and I'm trying to be diplomatic and toe the line, so you cannot straddle a fence, right?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so I called up Promise Lee. I said, I'm ready to speak publicly on what I think about this. And it's like, you are? And I said, yes, I am. And I think we need to have a press conference. And so we had that press conference. The group, I think it was the Austin group, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Had the press conference, and that's where I just came out.
Yeah.
And said, just talk about the injustice and what was going on. And it really shifted with me in the community, because I was true and authentic to myself, right? And I continue to do that. But at the same time, with the police department and Chief Miskey, there, this rift.
Yeah.
But I can't say that it was ever great, but, and they didn't understand it. It wasn't after the individuals. It's more just the culture and how they won't even consider that they have a bias, that they have
that was
a
our question. That
Yeah,
was one of our
that's
questions. Like, do you
exactly-
believe they even think that there is a problem,
bias.
like the mayor and the chief within the police department?
They don't think they do. It's daunting.
Yeah.
Right.
But until I don't think people can, unless they've been there or just really have that sense of what's going on. I don't, like, when we first got here, my mom got tuberculosis.
Mm.
And she was interned for a year at Fitzsimmons. I was put in an orphanage with my brothers and sisters. So for a whole year, I was in an orphanage. And I didn't get to see my mom. The nun would take us to the building where my mom was. And she'd say, look up and look at your mom and wave. And I remember looking, and that's my first memory in life, is doing this.
Mm.
And my first memory is more of a feeling, is longing for my mom and not understanding why I couldn't have my mom. And so when Trump was putting all these kids at the border in cages and they were being ripped apart from their mom and dad, I cry and I start to relive that trauma of being separated from my mom and dad. And my dad couldn't take us in because he knew 7 languages. God knows what he was doing. He was in special services at Fort Carson because he was like the translator for the Pope and for different generals, and he went all over the place. He got to meet the Dalai Lama, but because of all these languages, that he spoke, he was fluent in 7 and could speak 15. He was a music person, so you know how languages have a rhythm.
Right.
But anyway, I could feel that, and so in one of the earlier council meetings, I talked about that, and Richard shut me up, and he was like, they were ready to pounce on you. And why I bring that up is because they had no idea of the trauma of kids being separated from their moms or dads or their other siblings. But here I'm feeling it. I am crying, and when I see it on TV, I have to change the channel, and I'm like, what do I do? So I see what group that seems like a good group that's getting money for it, and I send money because I don't know what else to do.
Mm-hmm.
And so and I liken that to the experience here of being a person of color, and now we've got, you're a vet, right?
Yes.
You're a veteran who's gone to serve our country. and then get dismissed, you know, and treated in a certain way. So, so once I took the stand, and I think other people started to notice, and I wasn't holding back on the dais. And you're right, they do council member with their last names of guys, even Jill. But with me, it'll be Yolanda.
Yeah.
And so I kind of got over that right away because that happened from the very beginning. But as long as I can keep pushing. So we had the budget, right? I was the only one. It was not 8-1. And I couldn't agree with the budget because there was no budgeting for training, for implicit bias, for community. I was like, it's not in there.
Yeah,
No.
yeah.
And they didn't have the transit the way I wanted it. And I was like, so I had to say no. So a lot of the times I'm the lone voice. But you know what? You have to have a certain strength and resolve to be able to keep pushing and pushing and pushing. So
yeah, we appreciate you, and especially now, you know, listening to your story and everything that we didn't know what was going on, to have that happening and your community kind of like, you know, it's probably a rough time right there in the very beginning of that. So yeah, you know, and then you're gonna run again. So you know, I think that's pretty amazing. It's like you're the kind of person I like that. You know what I'm saying? And I think it's exactly what we need, man. And I don't know. Do you want to talk about LETAC?
Yeah, I mean there were some questions we had regarding that. Like, you know, they put LETAC in place, and we had started a coalition, the Chinook Center and a bunch of other groups for that people's budget, trying to like take money from the police department and putting it towards things like transit, towards things like housing.
Yeah.
And then Richard Scorman like emailed me back. He's my representative, and was like, "Well, they're going to be doing some of that through LETAC." So we're curious. Of your. I mean, that's what he told me, and then, you know, like
no,
exactly. That's what I wanted to hear. Because like I feel like LETAC is just you know, window dressing. I don't feel like they have any power. I was curious your thoughts on that, or you know, we're both curious your thoughts on LETAC, if it's going to be capable of actually doing anything.
Especially with the people that my focus is that too, but the way that they selected the people on there as well is and if you can't talk about it, it's fine.
I can talk about it.
Okay. Just so our viewers know what LETAC is, it's the Law Enforcement Transparency and Accountability Commission, right? Okay.
Yeah.
I can't believe I got it right that time.
I was like, wait a minute, you do it. Yeah.
I know. Let's make that difficult to say. So this, again, I want to make clear, like the people that are on LETAC, and I wanted you to be on there to make that decision. So going in, I did feel it was window dressing. That really even did more of a rift. I mean, council, wanted to like censure me for what I was saying, my First Amendment right. They didn't like it, so they wanted, not censure, that's a strong word. They wanted to talk about decorum. And how, when I never attacked anybody personally, right? It was just, this is what's happening. And so I thought, and I think I said it many times on council, that it is window dressing. And they made it clear over and over, right? This is not oversight. This is not oversight.
Exactly.
You're not going to be able to go into the records or the documentation. And I don't think there's been a good faith effort on the law enforcement side because they don't believe there's anything wrong.
Yeah.
Right. All those protests were just like people, you know.
Yeah, that was one of my
doing
questions.
the popular thing.
You're hitting. It's kind of crazy that we got a list of things here, and you're like kind of just going down them all. We asked, do they believe us? And you're, you know.
No, they think that everything they've done is by the book and it's right. And maybe the law and policies do allow that. That's the thing is, it allows it, right? But one of the things I always think is like, okay, so they're allowed to shoot someone running away in the back. They're allowed to do that, right?
Yeah.
But do they have to?
Right.
Do they do it because we can?
Yeah.
And or So one of the things I think that policy has to change,
Yeah,
right?
I agree.
It's got to go.
Legality and morality.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
you gotta
Right.
think about those
Yeah,
things,
yeah, laws are written by men. They can change. Like,
Right.
you know.
Right.
So that's got to change. But even if it is there, I think, well, they're like, well, they can do it. It's like, did they have to?
Right.
Could have they done it a different way?
Yeah.
Could they, but because of the culture and what is there, it's like they didn't.
Yeah.
And they won't. And as long as they don't acknowledge, hey, there's something up here, we have to do something, not just different, something drastic. We have got to really listen and look around to see what is working.
Right.
Because this isn't working.
Yeah.
Right.
And they keep saying, well, what about when white people are shot? And I'm like,
Also not
that
good.
even it reinforces that they don't
Yeah,
get it, right?
Right, exactly. Like they just don't understand it at all. Like, wait a minute, it's the bullet, my friend. Like, stop using the bullet. You know what I mean? I don't know if you know about I don't know if you watched our show last week.
I assume everybody watches all of our shows.
Yeah, of course, Sean.
You
we
talked
talked about
something
Cahoots up in
Cahoots.
Eugene.
Yeah. Can you tell me about Cahoots?
Yeah,
man?
are you familiar with Cahoots? I don't want to like
In Oregon.
In Eugene, Oregon, they implemented a thing back in the 70s. I think a bunch of hippies, where they would go to calls to for people experiencing mental health crises and drug problems and alcohol issues, and they would basically just talk people down. And eventually they got that integrated into the city, and now, if somebody calls 911, 911 will decide whether or not to send the police, the fire department, or Cahoots. And so Cahoots will go, and, if somebody's, drunk and they're, like, angry at their lover or something, instead of, like, locking them up and throwing them in jail and then having that whole long list of things that happen after that, they'll be like, hey, why don't we just, like, take you to another location, let you sober up, let you think about what you've done, so on and so forth. Or if you're having a bad trip, or if you're having a mental health crisis, these folks, it's a social worker and an EMT. And usually the social workers have had these experiences themselves. They're like former addicts, or they've experienced
that's why they get into
houselessness.
that business.
Yeah, exactly. And like whatever, Eugene's not perfect, but even the cops are like, we don't want to deal with this, just call Cahoots, because so many times the police get involved. It's just like the hammer with the nail, they have that one solution. Because even the white guy that was killed last year over in Broadmoor, he was clearly having a mental health breakdown, and the police just, it seems like got tired of dealing with it and sort of resorted to force in the end,
Yeah.
But it seems like the city's not even looking at things like that. They're just like, just going to keep doing the same thing and putting window
it's
dressing.
in the law. It's in the law, right?
Yeah.
So anyway, there are examples of it, and we just hope that like maybe he can look around, or we can look around as a city and say, hey, this is what this place is doing, and just see what might be able to work here. But I guess it starts with, first of all, believing them, and I don't know how to get to that. I don't know. It doesn't make. I don't know. We've even had
how do you work when you don't think you have a problem?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. We had I forgot the lady's name. I always forget her name.
Rojo. Florencia Rojo.
Yeah, she did. She led a research study on the CSPD, and we at Promise Lee's Church presented them with all of these facts and things of I think you were at that meeting.
I was there.
Yeah.
And the first thing Nisky says is, how do I even know that this stuff is real? He didn't believe the research that they were being presented with, and it was just
you
oh my
and Sean
gosh,
have both told him too, like there's unequal policing in the city, like to his face, and he's like, no,
it's not true.
Not true.
Yeah.
So how do you work with that?
Right.
I mean,
What do you see? And how does this city council, I guess, is really because being with the strong mayor system and things like this, like there's limitations on where, and the city council is focused on certain things, and
The budget.
I'm wondering where do we even have a defense for it as a community?
It's a strong mayor. It's just like the president's a commander-in-chief of the military, right?
Right.
The mayor is a commander-in-chief of the police department
Right.
and the fire department. So he is in charge of all those departments. And so, we do land use issues and the budget. We do some legislative stuff, like it'll go through us, but let's say like the bikes. or the scooters. That the administration starts the buy, and if they like it, they have the staff work on it.
Right.
But the only way we come in is when we vote on the ordinance and what that ordinance is going to look like.
Right, yeah.
And so it's real limited on what they do. And so this is really interesting and timely because the administration brought up, well, through 3 of the council members. Okay, so I don't know if you guys know that I wanted to put a plastic bag fee.
Yeah.
And I wanted to do that for recycling so that we can start using reusables. But I wanted that money to clean up. Like it was going to be almost $1 million to have a comprehensive, consistent cleanup throughout the whole city. And just, because I'm telling you, the city dirty. It was used to be spotless.
Yeah.
And
Even people that travel here, like I got family in Denver and Boulder and stuff, and they're like, the springs are just kind of grimy, like, you know what I mean? Like,
I mean, I've lived on big cities in the East Coast, so
yeah,
those are pretty grimy.
No, they are, and that's what when I grew up here, I remember going to different cities, right? I was like, ooh, they're dirty.
Yeah.
And I was like, they need to clean up. And when I was growing up, they used to have all these commercials, give a hoot, don't pollute.
Right,
And my little brother and I, we'd be little Nazis, and we'd like, oh, they threw trash away. And then, like, you're not supposed to do that.
Right.
We don't want dirt here
Yeah.
and trash. And so, we would turn them in, but, call them out. Like, we don't want to. So that part of me as a kid stuck to me because I was like, let's clean up the city. Well, of course, I could only get 3 council members to say, yeah, let's do that.
Yeah.
So the others said no, but because of the whole marijuana thing, and I'm going to call it cannabis. So cannabis, trying to get recreational here in the city to capture that revenue, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And because it's here anyway, right?
Exactly,
It's here,
yeah.
it's in Manitou and Pueblo, it's everywhere, and it's the black and gray market. You can get it.
Yeah.
It's like, well, we're good. We're doing it anyway. So why don't we just keep the money?
Yeah.
And so if 5 council members agree to put it on the ballot, we can do that. So on everything else, if we come up with an ordinance or an initiative, the mayor can veto it.
Right.
And we need 6 votes to override that veto.
Mm.
So, it's hard to get 6.
Yeah.
So it just came up to our work session, this last work session. 3 council members are working on it, and I'm sure they're working with administration, that they wanted to where the mayor can veto 5 council members that want to put something on the ballot. So that's even cutting more into what we can do and not do.
I bet the mayor would get rid of the council if he could.
Yeah.
Just, we don't even need a council. I'll just do it. I bet you he would.
No,
Anyway.
I think he would probably, I don't know, I can't say him directly, but I think the powers to be, and I remember when I interviewed in 2015 that they would like him to be all at large. Or maybe
All the councilors?
like maybe 5 at large. I think if they could do it, they'd get rid of me.
Oh, yeah.
I'd be gone.
Large would be.
And that's what's so great because I represent. It's not up to them, right?
Right.
It's up to the residents here, and it's up to my residents to keep me on there.
Yeah.
So so that's an example of taking more and more power. I can't say that the city council, each councilor really is powerful.
I mean, they could be, right, with the budget. I mean, when you have control over the budget, you could, in theory, leverage a lot of power, but it doesn't seem like they want to.
And you can see that if he's like, I want to be able to veto 5 of y'all. You know what I'm saying? I want to be able to tell 5 of y'all to go kick rock. Like, there's power in that. There's power in that. So I think that, gosh, man, I don't know. I guess I got a whole bunch of questions. We're already creeping. We're at an hour right now. So
wow.
Yeah. That was a quick, right? It goes by fast. But we wanted to kind of talk about education too. We can cut because there were more things that we wanted to talk about with the policing and stuff like that. But and the protest and the way that the DA handled the protest, with the stuff that happened in the Capitol, and we saw the difference in the way that the Capitol Police handled the rioters. And,
or they were in on it, some of them.
Yeah, that's what we figured. So, then we kind of course, our show being just about Colorado Springs, we're like, you know what? We witnessed that ourselves.
Yeah, right.
What were they? The yellow something? That
Yeah,
they had their
the
guns, and
right
when they
wing
went right up
folks,
to and I did talk to the chief about that. They went to the, what's that called? Where they meet, POC.
Oh yeah, you talking about when they took the guns up to the door.
They didn't do anything to them, right?
They let them do it. I remember. Yeah, they had a barricade up. They barricaded us. We couldn't even make a left onto the street in front of the PLC. We couldn't even get there. And but anyway, So the education issues that we have in District 2 and District 11. There's a whole bunch of statistics that are out, and new ones that are coming out now. And we just want to talk to you real quickly about a unified school district in the city, and would you support that idea, or
because these people fractured into smaller districts so they can have all that money stay there, right? District 20, District 12.
Yeah.
And that was another thing coming back. I was like, where are all these schools come from?
Exactly.
And the charter schools,
same.
Siphoning off money there. And no, I think we need a unified school district, or at least maybe just two, but the whole, and they talk about education. Tabor has really hurt us.
Yes.
This ratchet down effect of Tabor, that when the economy starts to do really well, we can't do well with it. We can only just come here. So we can never get the full benefit. And so it's a whole complicated series, but that's really hurt us. And people in transportation, I'm on transportation committees because of the transportation, but they want to blame the governor for not funding transportation more. And there's two things happening. We've got Tabor and gasoline. People aren't using gasoline like they did before because of the hybrids and all that, and electric cars. So they get upset when we want to fund the school districts. Well, the school districts have been such a victim or devastated by Tabor. Districts 11 and 2, they are triple Tabored. They're the state, the city, and the school district. So the funding is not there. But guess where we put our funding? And I said that one time I came in. The CARES Act, we got $125 million. $37 million came to Colorado Springs. We put most of that to police. $55 million went to the jails.
It's like
upgrades and to their staff and stuff like that. So it's like they prepare for the root canal, thinking, oh, these people are, for the root canal, instead of, I always say doing the annual tooth cleanings. So we, make sure we take care of things as we go, so we never get to that point. And so that's why I think we've just been so upside down. And the city doesn't realize they're in scarcity. But if they did do it the reverse and start to invest from the bottom up, it would just, if everybody's doing better, was it tides lift up all boats? Everybody would benefit. But instead, with the policies and where they're putting the priority, where the money's going, it's causing the division between the haves and the have-nots. And that's all I guess we have time for.
No, we can keep going.
I have one. I don't know if we want to. My big final question is: do you think Colorado Springs will ever have a train system?
I hope so.
Me too. Man.
It might not be in my lifetime.
I
think we need a light rail like Denver. I love it. From Pueblo to through Springs, and even going.
So nice just to ride the train on your way to work, read a book.
Yes, and and I know Jill is working on that. She's on that trail railroads committee.
Okay. Well, I guess we can't give her grief about that then.
We don't talk too bad about Jill and her bikes.
And the trees.
So anyway.
But the trees are important.
I like trees. I like trees too.
No, we are the hottest. We're 6 to 8 degrees hotter southeast than the rest of the city. And that's, with each temperature rise, there's a lot of health issues that come with it. So the tree canopy, I am going to be pushing for a tree canopy to be focused in southeast because it takes in a lot of that carbon dioxide. It cools things down, but as it is, we're the hottest. And so the trees are a big deal.
Yeah,
I'm like,
yeah.
we need to put some plants on our
with that.
rooftops and
Yeah,
color them all
totally,
white
yeah.
and.
I always
I'm
joke
with
in
that.
my
That's
urban
a good
studies
idea.
class that you can always tell when you're entering into like the poorer parts of town because you'll go like think of the old North End, beautiful tree canopy. And this, I used to live in Scranton. There was literally a road that you would cross from the nice neighborhood where Joe Biden's from, and then cross the street, and it was like there were no trees, like 0 trees. They just cut them all down,
Not
and
even
then it was
our
all
parks.
apartments. Yeah.
No trees
And it's
in
the same
park,
here.
yeah.
The just this intersection right here. There's like 0 trees here in this
It's like
little area.
100% concrete jungle.
Yep.
Yep. Anyway, well, thank you so much.
Yeah.
You're
Miss
welcome
Yolanda
so much.
Avila, thank you.
Avila.
Oh, Avila, I said it again. Thank you, Avila. Sorry.
Just call him Shoe On.
Hopefully we can have you back again. I think it would be awesome to have a segment in our show where we, ask our councilwomen questions and have the viewers, kind of ask you things. So maybe we could format something and catch your interest again and get your word out to the people. So yeah, thank you so much. And if you ever want to come back and say anything, just let us know, and we'll be more than happy to be there with you to say it. And we really appreciate everything you've done so far.
Definitely.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right,
Great to
guys.
be.
Thanks
All
a
right,
lot.
y'all.
All
Your
right.
power.